Camille, are we ready to start? Fantastic. This is to call to order for January 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Finance and Government Operations Committee. Camille, will you do roll call?
All right. Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
I'm here.
and Chairperson Yung.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Great. First item on the agenda is public comment. This item is reserved for persons who wish to address the committee on any matter within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee that is not on this agenda. And any public commenters?
We do have one request online.
Great. Okay. So nobody in chambers. Will close the public comment queue, and let's give this person 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes, all right. So our first speaker, or our only speaker, is Benzie. Benzie, you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will begin when you begin speaking.
Yes, hello, good morning. I'm coming to this committee to please ask if you can help me. My kids are being sexually abused, and the DFCS is refusing to conduct a screening. And I don't understand why, because my son, he's already confirmed that my wife was letting somebody rape him, and there was unnecessary bathing with the children, and also there was sexual contact between two of the children. So, I mean, this doesn't make any sense to me why the county is refusing to do a screening. I understand that my former attorney, she wants the sexual abuse to continue, but that's no excuse for the county to be negligent about protecting children, because the county's responsibility is towards my kids, not towards this crazy attorney who's voicing a lot of pro-pedophile statements. She's saying that pedophilia is not a crime, and that it's part of gender identity, all sorts of other crazy things, plus descriptions of children being molested. I mean, she's sending me all these sick messages. So, I mean, I forwarded it to the Board of Supervisors. I mean, you guys know what's going on. I don't understand why you guys can't go on a limb and tell DFCS, hey, this is wrong what you're doing. You need to go do your jobs. I posted all this online. I mean, if you want to Google Valerie Houghton sex trafficking, it's on several web pages. The information is there. So please, my name is Ben Z, and Supervisor Lee has my.
Thank you, and that concludes our speakers.
Thank you. At this time, we will approve the consent calendar and see if there's any. We'll see if there's any changes made to the consent calendar to approve. Vice Chair.
Thank you. I would like to remove item 13 from the consent calendar to make some comments. That's the Behavioral Health Facilities Expansion Report.
Great. I have no additional changes.
Then I'm happy to make that my motion. Thank you.
Second.
All right. It seems like we do not have any requests to speak, so I'll go ahead and call the roll. It looks like our only change to the agenda is removing item 13 from the consent calendar. So, Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Yung.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great. Oh, and good morning, everyone. My first committee meeting ever in life, so very happy to be chairing and to be here with you all today. Great. So first up is item 4, receive report from the Employee Services Agency relating to the bereavement policy and notification process for families of individuals who die while employed by the County of Santa Clara. Hi.
Good morning. I'm Rhonda Schmidt, Employee Benefits Director from the Employee Services Agency, and I'm happy to take any questions you have on this item.
And there's no presentation today?
No presentation.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Vice Chair?
No questions, but I'll say I appreciated the report laying out how we actually do engage with families. I know there were some misunderstandings there, and particularly the speed with which we we send out those notifications in order to try to relieve perhaps not emotional suffering, but financial worries and concerns by letting people know very quickly what benefits they're entitled to. So thank you. I learned a lot from the report, and I'm happy to move receipt.
Oh, I do have some questions. Oh, actually, more of a request. So, Rhonda, thank you to you and to staff for this report. It's a policy we hope to never have to enact, but it is by necessity of life that we have such a policy in place. And what I would request in an off-agenda update is that if ESA could designate a team of 2 to 3 persons that would manage this process or be lead on this process, the reason being is that these experiences are going to be different every single time, and I would say that it's very likely for each family, each survivor, or next of kin to have a different experience, and it's going to really require that we have a consistent team that interacts and is able to really embrace this role and apply it consistently across the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Okay. All right, Camila, at this time, are there any public comments on this item?
There are no requests to speak.
Okay, great. So I'll take a motion to approve, to receive report.
Yes.
And
so
then
moved.
second?
All right, so I'll call the roll. Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Yu.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 5 is receive the mid-year report from the Management Audit Division relating to fiscal year 2024-2025 work plan progress.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Solov. I'm the Management Audit Manager. I'll just briefly go through a few points in the report. Since the fiscal year commenced, we've issued 2 final audits, the roads maintenance audit and the audit of the district attorneys and administrative functions, and 1 draft, confidential draft audit, which is the extra help audit. And we have launched 5 audits, and the 6th audit from the current work plan begins tomorrow. We have a kickoff meeting, the entrance conference tomorrow. And we have expended about 5,500 hours. About 4,500 of those hours were for the audits on the work plan. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'll turn to my co-chair.
Thank you. A question about the supervisor-directed audits. We each have, as I understand, 40 hours of individually directed projects, correct?
40 hours per request, not more than 40 hours per request.
And is there a limited number of requests?
No.
That's good to know. And if those hours are underutilized, are they not billed, or is this, or whether or not we use them where it's all part of the same contract?
No, they're not billed. We only bill for the hours that we work. That are the hours that we work that are under the billable cap. Let's put it that
Right,
way.
got it. Okay, thank you. That's all of the substantive question I have. I wanted to direct a comment as well toward clerk of the board for some future action. The current contract, I know, expires this year, and you're in conversation regarding an extension. I think that's important. I want to note historically, Harvey Rose has served as the BOS independent auditor for the past 45 years. Since 2010, the board hasn't directed the clerk of the board to issue an RFP or a competitive solicitation process. And really simply for the sake of good government practices, I think it's time to examine whether we are in fact still employing the best firm for this role. Just to be clear, Cheryl, I'm not making this recommendation in response to any specific dissatisfaction or noted shortcomings, rather simply because it has been, as I quickly do my math, 15 years. And I think it's just prudent to check ourselves regularly and be sure that we're using public dollars to the best effect. So I'd like to make a motion that would direct the clerk of the board to place or I guess through administration, to direct the clerk of the board to place an item on the February Board of Supervisors meeting agenda to recommend a short-term single-source contract extension for Harvey Rose that would provide sufficient time for the clerk of the board's office to work with county council to create and implement a competitive solicitation for management audit services for the board. And I would defer to the clerk and county council to recommend an appropriate length of extension. I want to make clear that I certainly encourage Harvey Rose to respond to the solicitation request. I'll hear your feedback, if that's through the chair, before I look for a second, in case there are any changes to that.
I was just going to say that we'd be happy to work with Clerk of the Board's office, County Council, and I think we could lift from the last process and update, obviously, but lift from the last RFP process that was conducted, I believe, in 2011, if I'm remembering. So
We dug up 2010, but we could be out of
it might have
date, so
started
I-
in 2010 and concluded in 11 is probably what happened.
Okay.
But we can refresh all those materials.
Okay, thank you. Then my motion stands.
Yes, I'm happy to second that motion. And
And that includes receiving the report today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay, and just to clarify, we do not have any requests to speak either.
thank you.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and call the roll then.
Yes.
All right. Vice Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
And Chairperson Jung.
Yes,
Thank you, motion passes.
thank you. I always feel like I want to bang the gavel after a motion passes.
Go for it.
Okay, we are now moving to item 6, receive report from the Finance Agency relating to the permitting process and related information technology business needs for the Department of Planning and Development. Hi there. Does staff have a presentation this morning?
Hi, good morning. No, we do not have a presentation, but we're available to answer questions. And to introduce myself, I'm Robin Rose. I'm the Internal Audit Manager for the Finance Agency's Internal Audit Division. And with me is my colleague, Lindsay Shimanur, who is the auditor in charge for this engagement.
Okay, I'll turn to my vice chair. If you have any questions or comments?
Let me double check, but I don't have comments on this item, but thank you so much for the report.
Thank you.
Okay, and I also want to thank you for this report and thank you for your teams. I know this is multiple departments here working on this and for putting your efforts and your continued efforts to improve our permitting process and IT capabilities. I know that in my office, we often receive a lot of feedback and suggestions from our constituents about the process. So this is a happy update we could provide to them. What I did want to ask about is that I was very happy to see agreement with all of the recommendations, but will there be an opportunity for us to learn more about the implementation plan or the process? And I want to just make sure this is really towards making sure you all have what you need to implement these changes.
Correct. And with me as well is management from Department of Planning and Building. And just to kind of give you a little context, as a consulting engagement, it's a collaborative effort with the department. And so the timeline is based on their when their resources and when they're able to implement, but it's been a very joint effort that they are working with their consultant, Barry Dunn, as well, to help them with their process improvements in the permit process as well as the IT area. And so we usually go in about a year after the audit is issued to check on the status of the implementations for each of the audit recommendations and work with management on any questions they have with the recommendations and seeing if it was feasible.
Okay, so the work is I want to make sure I understand you. The work is happening now.
Correct.
You're going through all the implementations of each recommendation now, and it's going to be an ongoing process, approximately a year out.
Well, we usually, as an internal audit, we work with management because we're not the ones implementing it. It's the department that implements the recommendations. And so we touch base with them to see where they're at on the status, and then we'll report out in a follow-up audit on if they're able to recommend or partially recommend. And so joining me is Jocelyn Oceana, who is the department manager that can provide a little bit more context on where they're at with the process.
Thank you.
If I may.
Yes.
So,
Hi, Jack.
Hi, good morning, Supervisor Jung and Supervisor Ellenberg. Thank you for the opportunity. We're working with Barry Dunn, who will take this information and incorporate it. So our implementation is probably more than a year out, probably about a year and a half. And so we have to have this information analyzed. They will also make recommendations in association with the recommendations you see before you. Perhaps once those recommendations have been realized, we can come back and report to you on the progress of the implementation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would like that. I would like for a report, for a report back at FGOC at a later time with the status updates on the implementation of the recommendations, and really if any of the recommendations are in need of additional resources or support, or we uncover something else that prevents implementation. So I would say like have that report come back in the fall. Would that be a feasible timeline?
Certainly. We could come back and at least give you an update
Yes.
on where we are in the progress.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to receive the report with a report back on the status of implementation to come back in the fall to FGOC.
Happy to second.
Oh, and we should see if there's, any public comment on this item.
There are no requests to speak for this item.
All right, thank you, Camille.
Of course, you're welcome. All right, so I'll go ahead and call the roll unless there's further discussion.
No, roll call.
All right, Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Young.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Motion
you to
passes.
staff. So item 7 is receive the monthly legislative report from the Office of Intergovernmental Relations.
Good morning, Chair Young and Vice Chair Ellenberg. Thank you for having us. My name is Monica Tong. I serve as the Program Manager 3 with Intergovernmental Relations in the Office of the County Executive, and I am joined today by Elaine Trin, who serves as the Program Manager 2 in our office. Intergovernmental Relations is commonly referred to as IGR and provides a monthly report on state-level legislative work to FGOC. Please note that the slides in your packet reflect the point in time when they were created and submitted, so they may not reflect the most recent information, but our oral report will reflect that updated information. Generally, IGR oversees the county's legislative programs in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., and we have officially entered the 2025-2026 legislative session in Sacramento and the 119th Congress in Washington, D.C. At this time, I'll turn it over to Elaine.
Good morning, Chair Young and Vice Chair Ellenberg. So this slide highlights a few key upcoming legislative dates. A key deadline is this Friday, where it's a deadline to submit bill ideas to Legislative Council, and the last date for bill introduction is February 21st. At our December FGOC, we shared our state delegation members. Since then, committee assignments have been released. And so the next few slides will highlight the committee assignments for our delegation members. A few key positions we'd like to highlight is Senator Becker as Chair of Energy, Utilities, and Communication. Senator Cortese remains Chair of Transportation. Senator Wahab is now the Chair of Housing. And on the Assembly side, Robert Rivas remains the Speaker, and Assemblymember Berman is still Chair of Business and Professions. Assemblymember Clara is the Chair of Judiciary. Assemblymember Alex Lee is still Chair of Human Services, as well as Assemblymember Pellerin, still Chair of the Elections Committee. And I'll turn it back to Monica.
Thank you. Late last year, Governor Newsom called the first extraordinary session, also known as a special session, related to safeguarding our community to ensure Californians have the support and resources they need to thrive. This is a fairly broad statement, so the budget committees are hearing bills related to the response to the new federal administration, as well as the Los Angeles area wildfires. Since our December update, the Senate and Assembly special session committees were announced, and key members of significance are Senator Wahab and Assemblymember Lee, who are both members of their respective committees. As you'll see, the Assembly Committee has 27 members. It is a giant committee. Relating to the special session budget bills for the federal administration response, those include $25 million to the California Department of Justice for defending the state against legal actions, $15 million to the Judicial Council for the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission and nonprofit providers, and $10 million to social services for immigration services funding to those who are existing state vendors. The special session budget bills for the wildfire response includes $2.5 billion of authority for initial emergency response and recovery expenditures. The hearings on these budget bills begin as we speak and will continue through the afternoon. The Assembly is not expected to vote today, but the Senate is expected to vote this afternoon. The governor gave a high-level overview of the proposed 2025-2026 budget earlier this month, but the full budget summary was released on January 10th through the director of the Department of Finance. Due to the 2024-2025 budget spreading the $45 billion deficit over 2 years, there is a modest surplus of $363 million. And we are currently waiting for additional trailer bill language to be released regarding some of the other important things that we are reviewing. In November, the board approved IGR's proactive and responsive strategy for state budget proposals, which included protecting excess ERAF from being diverted, expanding healthcare supplemental payments and the timing of those payments, and preserving investments and avoiding cuts to our programming. We will continue monitoring the budget process, and as mentioned, additional trailer language is expected that will provide more clarity to key issues of importance to us. After that, the May revision will be released, and the legislature will negotiate the budget deal. So we will stay on top of that and continue to provide updates. To conclude our presentation today, we wanted to give a quick update on the approved 2025 legislative proposals. Our newest Assembly member, Patrick Ahrens, introduced AB 243, a bill to help systems-involved youth demonstrate financial independence for financial aid and access to higher education. And in the governor's budget, under the California Health Facilities Financing Authority, the Community Services Infrastructure Grant Program was reappropriated through June 2028. While this is initial positive news, we will closely monitor this situation and jump into action if necessary. Our Sacramento team is actively working to secure authors for the other two proposals, and we will be sure to provide an update at the next FGOC meeting. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Vice Chair?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. So much has changed in such a short time. This was supposed to be a year about affordability and how we make California more affordable to more residents. And instead, it's going to be a year of disaster recovery and playing a lot of defense to hang on to federal funding in particular that we're going to be depending on, whether it's continued release of FEMA funds or Medi-Cal funds, which is, I think, a top concern for us at the federal level, and it's certainly in our interest to make sure that all of our state delegation is aware of that as well, along with the other 12 counties. I think 13 counties in total have public health, operate directly hospitals, but all counties are responsible for the Medi-Cal population. So this is, I think, perhaps the biggest budgetary threat to county budgets up and down the state. It's certainly something CSAC we'll be talking about as well. And just to Sharon for continued transparency, I'm currently the first vice president for CSAC, the California State Association of Counties, and our county appointed delegate to the National Association of Counties. And I do spend a good deal of time with either here or in Sacramento, engaging with directly with our own delegation, but also with legislators up and down the state on issues of interest to counties at large, and would encourage you to join me in Washington, D.C. for the NACO conference. Their legislative conference is a really excellent opportunity to engage with federal counterparts, to really hear about how counties are addressing a lot of the issues that we have in common. There will also be speakers that may just pain your heart, just fair notice there. I'll share also appreciation for IGR in supporting my most recent quarterly legislative briefing for our delegation. We did it this time on Zoom, and the focus was the RMC proposed purchase. I want to thank County Executive James Williams and Hospital Executive Paul Lorenz for joining us and making a presentation to our members. We are really fortunate. The leadership list that you all shared shows the influence that members of our delegation have at the state level, and they are very interested in what is happening in our county and look for opportunities, and we make sure they find them, to use subject matter experts from our excellent staff, and we want them, frankly, to be able to brag about us, to know what's going on in this county so that they can say, here's a model, here's what Santa Clara County is doing. So I'm very, very appreciative of the work that IGR does and the partnership that we have together, and just wanted to lift that up. And happy to move receipt of your report.
I also want to echo my appreciation for the IGR team. Congratulations on the legislative priority policies that were already carried forward. Shout out to our new Assembly Member Patrick Ahrens for really being a partner to the county on this issue. Yeah, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I just really want to, Elaine and Monica, extend my appreciation to you and to David for staying on top of these issues and really being at the forefront, echoing what Supervisor Ellenberg just says, that, this is not a directive, but just a recommendation to help us brag about our work. Santa Clara County is at the forefront and the first on many fronts, many issues that are being modeled throughout the state. And I think during these turbulent times, uncertain times, other counties across the state and the country will be looking at what we've done in the past and what we're doing now. So go forth and brag and help us advocate. So I want to turn to public comment, if there's any speakers.
We do not have any requests to speak.
Okay, thank you. So I second Supervisor Ellenberg's motion, and let's call it to a vote.
Okay. Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Young.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, items 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are on the consent calendar and were approved during that item. So now we will hear item 13, and that's receive report from the Facilities and Fleet Department and Behavioral Health Services Department relating to behavioral health facility expansion efforts and progress.
Good morning, Supervisors. Keeley, Deputy County Executive, here with David Berry from Facilities and Fleet. This report includes an update on the 3 applications to the Bond BHCIP program. These are 3 projects that the county submitted in December, and also an update on the CHAFA grant, which our IGR colleagues also referenced in their report. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I'll turn to Vice Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the report today. I've asked for these to show up on the calendar monthly, just to keep our expansion efforts top of mind for everyone, and to make sure that we're accountable to the public health crisis that the previous board declared back in 2022. I I want to think about ways in which we can, I think, more accurately showcase the lives that we're impacting beyond just the bed numbers. Certainly, the bed numbers added per acuity level is critical, but those numbers are static and don't necessarily reflect the true kind of exponential effect. One bed isn't for one person each year, and different levels of acuity involve shorter and longer stays. And when you're reporting out the numbers, an interesting add, I think, would be to include approximately how many patients will benefit from a locked acute, a subacute, all the levels, residential, adult residential crisis, to really understand that each additional bed has an exponential impact. Does that sound like something that's kind of a straightforward data add?
Yes.
I realize it will be rough, but
Yes, we will work on estimates, perhaps similar to what the Office of Supportive Housing does when it brings its developments. It estimates the number of individuals who live there. So we'll work on something, whether for the, not sure we will have it ready for the public health crisis report, which is second meeting in February, but definitely at the next FGOC or and thereafter.
okay, that sounds great. And now it's a squirrel, but I have to ask. The Office of Supportive Housing, that's not really, when you talk about the number of people, do you mean a family, or are you talking about numbers of families cycling through the same unit? What are we measuring? I didn't know we were doing that.
In the Office of Supportive Housing reports, they have a number of units and
Right.
number of persons that each unit can serve. But now that you ask that question, is it like over a period of time or at a static point? I will have to double check and check with my colleague Consuelo Hernandez.
Yeah,
and we'll
thanks.
get back to
I
you.
really am curious about that. Off agenda is fine, because that's a big difference. We think of permanent supportive housing not necessarily for the entire life of the building, but for a long period of time. So if it's 5 people, is it a family of 5, or is it 5 different residents turning over?
Yes, Supervisor, I think we can find out information
Cool.
quickly and just send you perhaps an email about that.
That's fine as well. Thank you. And speaking of bed numbers, were we to be successful with all of our Prop 1 applications, do you have a number on what that total increase would be and at what level? I think they're all subacute, correct? Or below?
Yes. If you give me just 30 seconds, I'll have that number for you shortly here.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Supervisor, if we're successful in our applications, we would be adding 36 beds at the Morgan Hill Skilled Nursing Facility, 18 of which will be special treatment program. Then we'll also have approximately 57 beds as part of the additional beds as part of the redevelopment of 101 Jose Figueres, and those will be subacute beds. We might get a few beds in, at the other levels, but we'll confirm that. And then also about 32 beds in substance use residential at 264 North
So
Morrison.
the numbers are really significant, and we expect to hear this spring?
We've heard May.
May. Okay, so maybe May.
Yes.
Thank you. We've talked a little bit about the SB 43 progress. That's the expansion of conservatorship rules, which creates a new category of eligibility for people only with a serious substance use disorder and not a co-occurring mental illness. And before SB 43, you couldn't conserve somebody who only had a substance use disorder. Now the law says we can, but there's no licensing for such facilities in place. is an update coming in the next quarterly report on how we're going to build or repurpose for that group?
Yes, our intention was to include in February's report a section on SB 43 and our progress on the tasks that we had identified.
Excellent, thank you. Last question, it may be better directed to Pathway Society, and I'm happy to do that if you don't have the answer, but curious if you have any information about why their 30-bed SETS facility is behind schedule?
I think, to be more precise, I would ask to connect with them.
I'll do that.
And then provide you the information.
It's their property, they are operating it. Does the county have any direct role in that program?
We contract with them for the beds, so we
Got
pay
it.
for
So
the
we'll
beds,
send people to it.
depending on who utilizes those beds. But in terms of the infrastructure project, they are the ones that have received the funds. They're managing the construction and the development, and they will be the ones who will operate the beds, and they own the facility.
Thank you so much. Even with these monthly reports and the quarterly reports to the whole Board of Supervisors, there's still such a misperception in the public. I note at the bottom of the mayor of San Jose's newsletters, he includes an exhortation to reach out to the county to tell us to do something about expanding mental health beds and services, which may certainly help perpetuate the misinformation that we are not doing anything. We're doing quite a bit, not as fast as any of us would like, but the progress is real. And I would encourage you, and again through the county executive, to really think about how we better own this narrative, because we are doing work at a remarkable clip. I know what's happening in other counties, and I don't see this kind of movement and this kind of exponential growth. But a story is a story, and I think we need to be telling the story and showing the receipts for what we're doing and what is coming online. So that is less specific direction than really genuine encouragement to work with OPA and behavioral health and think about how we do a better job getting this information out to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Supervisor Ellenberg. Really excited about this. Fantastic work, adding more beds to cover this gap. And on the same vein, in terms of owning this narrative, I want you to, I would hope that you could look to the board offices as a resource and an asset for communicating. I think the worst case scenario for me is for a site to go live and for public outcry for lack of information or lack of engagement to reframe this really positive development into something that's not as positive. So please, just a general recommendation, again, not direction, but please see us as a resource, and particularly for the sites that will be going live in my district, the Jose Figueres site in Morrison, definitely please keep us posted, updated, and let's explore opportunities where we can help communicate that plan together.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely for the projects for which the county has submitted applications to the state, we are developing the community engagement communication strategies. We'll be working with the appropriate board offices to gather their input, your input, and then we'll be implementing those. And then to both of your comments around just kind of broader communication about our progress and the activities that we've been implementing, it is noted we will be working on efforts to communicate to the public and internally about our progress in behavioral and the development and increasing behavioral health treatment facilities.
Yeah. Thank you. And if I could just address two of the comments that you just made. One, it's really important. I know we're talking publicly about the addresses. We haven't received those grants yet, but we want to make sure that there's real community engagement in those neighborhoods and not have folks panic as they hear that something may be coming and the county hasn't done anything yet. We have to talk about when the right time is to not be premature, but also to not be late so that neighborhoods think that, that we've been less than transparent. I think that
Or-
timing is critical.
Or a decision has already been made without their input or their.
But we have applied,
Yeah.
so to some extent,
Yes.
decisions have been.
But the timing of the
made.
communication is
Right.
key, so I would, no pun intended. But certainly that's something that we do have
Yeah.
to consider, and multiple points on the timeline of communication.
Absolutely. And second, to the board offices being helpful, that is so critical. But the reason that I want something to come from OPA is that I think it's also really critical that our 5 offices are sharing the same information. And I don't want it to be just up to D4 or D2 to determine how we're going to present the information, or if we're going to promote just high acuity or crisis residential or whatever. I think that having county consistent information and narrative is really important, and then we should be pushing it out on whatever our own appropriate channels are in community meetings and wherever else. But I'm reluctant to create that information, although I'm often tempted to do so. I do think it's really important that we are all telling the same story.
Yeah, I would not argue with that at all. And I guess what I'm asking now is, off of your comments, does more formal direction or formal request is necessary for us to ensure that that OPA is part of this communications and community engagement plan?
I don't think so. The board has communicated these recommendations in some way, shape, or form in the past, and we have previously indicated that we will be working with OPA, although I recognize that that work is not yet complete.
Yeah, I think I would feel better than making it a motion today, since, as Key noted, we have talked about this before, but I think we need to formalize it to just make sure we are all accountable to the same expectations. So
The same messaging, to your point, and make sure that we have, I think, especially key with your work with the Office of Supportive Housing and here over this wider portfolio now, that's very sensitive in the public eye. You wouldn't want your board offices to go rogue on any messaging either. So, Supervisor Ellenberg, I would invite a motion.
I would move receipt of this report with direction for the appropriate departments, including FAF, behavioral health, and whoever else you deem is necessary, to coordinate with OPA to land on specific messaging that conveys clearly to the public our progress on expanding access to beds for serious mental illness and substance use disorders in concert with the public health crisis declaration.
I'm sorry, before I second that motion, Camille, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not have any requests to speak.
Okay, great. Then I will second that motion, and we can go to a roll call vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Yoon.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay. That is our agenda for FGOC today. So at this time, I'd like to adjourn the meeting to the next regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, February 11th, 2025 at 2 p.m. right here in the Board of Supervisors chambers. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Well done, Chair Young.
Oh, thank you. Happy first committee meeting. Oh.